Tuesday's daf is daf ayin base. Says the Gemara, Nikse b'yom kosher, you harvested by day, it's kosher. But Gemara, but now we're learning Megillah, kol alayla kosher, the whole night is kosher, like tiras oimer. Ulahakte chalav mevarim, you can roast the leftovers, the fats, and the limbs from a carbon night. And the Mishnah then concludes, Zaklal. Anything with mitzvahs by day, the entire day is kosher, but that's it. You can't do it the following night, like a carbon. And kol hayom the whole day. Something with the mitzvahs at night, kosher kol hayla. It's kosher night. Sounds and does it mean only night? Yes. Tony Laila Dumidiyim. Since we're contrasting day and night, Ma the Yom Balayla a carbon. You can only bring a carbon by day, you can't bring it by night. So after Laila, the Yom no. So the night activities you can't do by day. So you can't do Kirsayim. Still with the Mishnahs. Amar Ablakasha. Tamachaikas. Ha Rebbe, ha Rabbi Lazar Rab Shimon. This is Rebbe, and this is his friend, Rab Shimon son Rabbi Lazar. The time we learned what happens in the following scenario. No, but the Evid, can you bring it by day or not? So this is what happened. You were standing over there, you were bringing a carbon mincha, and suddenly suddenly it became tummy somehow or another. You were being makriv, you were getting all ready, and became tummy. So it depends like this. If there's other sources straight away, they can go ahead and cut it right now by day. This is daytime, because that's when you're being makriv it. If you can, right next to the base of Mikdash somewhere in Yerushalayim, you can go ahead and cut some brand new and then grind it, do everything in the morning, and so on the same day, then you should. I bring another one. We don't want people to go around saying that I can become tummy and bring a carbon. People make a mistake because everybody's watching this and think that even a yachid can bring tummy. If you don't have a breda, then we say, be smart, keep quiet. Don't say a word. What does Rebbe clearly say from here? Bidi Evid, if you have Bidi Evid, if let's say you cut it at night, everything was good, and then suddenly became that you were standing in the base of Mikdash by day, and suddenly became tummy. Ideally, he says, find another source, cut it by day. That means he holds befedi, but the Evid became tummy, or the nitmas. The Omer became tummy. If he became tummy, another kohen can do it. Nitmas, the Omer became tummy. So what does Rebbe say? If you have no beredus, it's not chachila, find another source and cut it and harvest it today, which means by the Evid he holds by day, you can do it. That's the mission that says if you didn't do it by night, do it by day. Oh, but Rabbi Shimon says benkach, we say have a pikech v'shteik. Say even if you have a bereda, you can't cut it by day. No, but he holds that even by the Evid. The mitzvah Balayla is only, that's the Mishnah Megillah. So Rabbi Lazar B'Shim is the Mishnah Megillah, and Rebbe is the Mishnah here. If you don't do the right way, it's possible. You know, you have to do it at night, you do it only at night. Rabbi Lazar B'Shim's father, Shimon, who was a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, and it makes sense that Rabbi Lazar B'Shimon followed Rabbi Akiva. What did Rabbi Akiva say? Klal Rabbi Akiva. Akiva gave a rule. Kol melach she'efshe any malacha that you could have done the Erev Shabbos. This is Rabbi Lezer in the middle. We talk about over there if you can bring the knife on Shabbos and anything else. So Rabbi Kiva is a rule. Rabbi Lezer says that machshiri mitzvahs doichen Shabbos and all that. Rabbi Kiva is a rule. Anything which you could have prepared before Shabbos ain't doichen Shabbos. You have no excuse. You should have prepared it. It's not doichen Shabbos. So he holds like Rabbi Kiva. Right? That if you could do it before, you can do it before. Then he also holds like Rabbi Shmuel. He also holds like Rabbi Shmuel, who says that the k'tilas ha'omer mitzvah, that cutting the omer. No, it's not only the hakrava of the omer is a mitzvah. Even the cutting part. You would think that the cutting is only a hechsher mitzvah. The mitzvah is the makim. No, Rabbi Shmuel says the cutting is also part of the mitzvah, and therefore the cutting is also doiche Shabbos. So on the one hand, the cutting is doiche Shabbos. On the other hand, Akiva gives the rule that anything you could have done before, you should have done before. Rabbi Shmuel says, "Ma chadish rishus, av kotche rishus." We have a machlekes how to learn. What's supposed to be be'erev bechadish v'kotche tishbos. So machlekes Rabbi Kiva, actually machlekes Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva says it's talking about the Shemitah that is passed before and goes after. We learn the whole idea of Tosfos from there. Tosefos to add, and from there we learn on Shabbos you have to add to Shabbos. Rabbi Shmuel says no. You know we learn from there. Ma chadish rishus is talking about Shabbos. Just like chadish plowing is. Is there ever a case of plowing a field that should be a mitzvah? There's never a case of plowing, go plow and should be a mitzvah. So also, when did we say on Shabbos, don't do katzir is like chodesh, only if it's a rishus. But if there's a mitzvah to cut, you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. Where is there a mitzvah of ever cutting or harvesting? The omer. So Rabbi Shmuel clearly holds from here, there's a mitzvah in k'tzira so omer, not just in being makriv, but also k'tzira. Yotz k'tzira omer, she mitzvah, it's a mitzvah. Now, so Rabbi Lazar holds of both things. He holds anything you could have done before Shabbos, do before Shabbos, and also there's a mitzvah to kind of Shabbos. He says, if you can tell me that you could do by day, then do that on Shabbos. Then remember, I hold like Rabbi Kiva that anything you could have done before Shabbos, we're not going to allow you to push away Shabbos. There's a mitzvah to cut. True, it's ideal to cut it on Shabbos, right? It's a mitzvah, but you do it before Erev Shabbos, following Rabbi Kiva, is a raya that you cannot do it outside of a date. So if you have to do it at night, it can only be done at night. That's why we're explaining Rabbi Shimon holds it can only be done at night, not during the day, because he holds like Rabbi Akiva that anything you could do in Shabbos, if you could have done before Shabbos, do before Shabbos, and it's a mitzvah. It's better to do it in Shabbos, but if you did it before Shabbos, should have done it before Shabbos. And yet we allow you to push away Shabbos. Why are we allowing you to push away Shabbos? Must be because you have no exactly. You can't do it before, you can't do it after. This is the time. This is when you have to do it. The fact is that it's still Doichi Shabbos. Shemamina nikze shaloikim mitzvah possible. If you don't do it the right way at night, it is possible. And therefore, just like you can do it before, you can do it after either. It's been done the night. No, your whole basis is because Rabbi Loza was the son of Rabbi Shimon. Yeah, Rebbe loved Talmid Rabbi Shimon. Rebbe is also Talmid Rabbi Shimon. He's a friend of Rabbi Shimon, but he's also a Talmid of Rabbi Shimon. How do we know that? But Tanya, we learned in Moshe Shabbos. Rebbe said, "Kishayinu lameid in Torah eitz of Shimon b'Tekaya." We learned in the Seir Tekaya. We learned by Rabbi Shimon Yochai Torah. Ayinu maidin l'Hashem. Rabbi Shimon Yochai holds that all the chatzedas are like one thing. You let it carry from one chatzer to the next chatzer. It's all the same rishus, the same kind of rishus. We brought him oil, valuntis, and towels. Mechatzer legag from the chatzer to the roof, and megag lekarfer from the roof to the porch, and mekarfer of the karfer acha from one porch to the next porch. Until we came to the spring where we sat and learned. They sat by and learned. So on the Reichsbay, we used to go and bathe ourselves, and we gave him a towel. So you must say, so how can everyone argue? How can you do by day? So he also agrees, but he says, Rabbi Kiva is saying the knife of Bris Milah. Is there any advantage bringing a Shabbos? Is there nafkamina as far as the mitzvah milah is where you brought it Friday to the house or you brought it Shabbos? Absolutely no difference. But if the mitzvah lechatchil is to do it on Shabbos, navos, but yeah, he did it Friday, it's good enough. Then Reb Shimon says, do it on Shabbos, and Rebbe holds like that, Reb Shimon. So even though you could have done on Friday, and Rebbe Kiva says he's not doing Shabbos, but over here it's better to do it on Friday night. The Tanya, Amar Shimon, look how beautiful it is. You have to kosher whole night long. How beautiful is a mitzvah in the right time? For example, this Rav Shimon says, you could, if you bring a carbon tamid on Shabbos, you're allowed to bring the fats and the limbs all night long. Yet Rav Shimon says, bring it on Shabbos. Don't wait. Why not wait? Why be mechal Shabbos? You could do it at night because it's chaviva mitzvah b'shait. It's always more beloved to do the mitzvah at the right time. And this is even stronger. It's not just a chaviva. The mitzvah is to do it at night. It's only if you didn't do it at night, if you could use from the oim you already cut. No. So how can Rabbi Shimon brings and says it has to be only done at night? It's very simply. Either Rabbi Shimon doesn't agree. That's different. A different reason. That's what I just said. You know why it's different? I'm not sure why they don't just do what I said. You already shechted the animal with your Mechal Shabbos. So once this very same mitzvah is all connected, we allowed you to Mechal Shabbos, you have no breda, so we say, what? Do the rest also on Shabbos. And Chaviv Mitzvah Shaita allows you to do it because you're taking the fats of that carbon and you're bringing a thing on Shabbos. But over here, in the case of the Ketzira Sa'omer, you weren't doing Shabbos at all yet. You weren't doing Shabbos at all. So why do it Friday night when you could have done it Friday by day? Must be that you have no breda. It can only be done in the right time, not by day before, not day after. The Gemara, as a Shabbos. No, it's a very good point. Rabbi Lazar says. So what's his raya? Hachinami does the Shabbos. So he holds. Rebbe holds that Tzidus Oimer takaloi dachis Shabbos. You decided that Tzidus Oimer is doiches Shabbos, and you brought the thing Rabbi Shmuel. He holds that it's not doiches Shabbos. That's not doiches Shabbos. He doesn't agree with Rabbi Shmuel. You also had to hold like Rabbi Shmuel that Tzidus is a mitzvah, and then and therefore it only that's is doiches Shabbos. Why did you before? I hold that it's not doiches Shabbos. And so therefore, you can't do it on Shabbos. You cannot do it on Shabbos. So the whole thing falls off. But when you could do it in the week, I don't care if you do it at night, do the day before, the day after, it makes, What do you mean? We had all these missions now, but now if we start off this pedic, we learned that whether Shabbos, whether the weekday, you always had 3 soy, no more, no less. Clearly, that's brought a Shabbos. And if they want to look at Rebbe, who said Rebbe agrees with that mission? If you want the next, you bring 3 people. Not like Rebbe you bring. If he says on Shabbos you bring only 1 person to minimize the chil. Let's say 3 people. B'shalosh kupa, 3 boxes. Shalosh megalos, 3 sickles. Again, like Rebbe, who said he agrees? He doesn't. He holds you don't do it on Shabbos at all. And then so when Asma says it says the mission of Shabbos Yemelem Shabbasu on Shabbos he screams out Shabbos, and they say yeah, the like Rebbe. None of that conforms to the Rebbe. Anyone needs to be a kosher doiche Shabbos. You cut it by day. It's kosher, and it's doiche Shabbos. Man shammers laid the amman b'yem kosher. Who just said? We just said a minute ago. Who's the one who holds that by day is kosher? Rebbe. And it says in favor doiche the Shabbos. It says clearly it's doiche Shabbos. Wait, tell me he doesn't believe in Shabbos. Says the Gemara. My lav tzida. We understood we're talking about what's doiche Shabbos. The cutting. The mitzvah, the tzila can be done by day if he didn't do it at night, but the hakrava is doiche Shabbos. The being makriv, but not the cutting. You tell me not cutting. What time Rebbe says? It says in the pasuk, "Vayidaber Moshe as kol moed Hashem as moed Hashem." Matam lema. The whole parsha there in Emor talks about all the Yom Tovim. What are you again? We're summarizing with Moshe moed Hashem. What's it going to tell you? We only know that the carbon tamid, and we only know that the carbon pesach. It says over there that you bring it even on Shabbos. I feel about Shabbos. I feel about Tumah. In case it's silent. I know all the other kabbanas at Tzibur, for example, like Korban Musaf, whatever it is, that you bring it on Shabbos. The following you should do to Rebbe all of their times. That means even on Shabbos. And this is actually I said it's the parsha. This is in Parsha Pinchas. Minayin l'Rabbi is oimer. How do you know to include also an oimer, which is not written in that parsha? The hakar of imay, and that which is brought with the oimer, which is the carbon with oimer, or shtei alechem, the full bread on Shavuos, together with hakorim on the 2 sheep over them. How do you know also Shabbos? Tamalaymer by David Moshe is Moya Hashem. That's a V'daber Moshe is Moya de Hashem. All the Yom Tovim, Hakosav Kava Moya leKulan. All the kabbanas you bring in whatever the date that it has to be brought. Lemay. Now what are we talking about here? Ileila Hakrava. You're going to tell me that what Rebbe says is talking about being makriv on Shabbos, but you cannot harvest shtei halechem and hakrava. Remember, we're comparing oimer to shtei halechem. You're not makriv shtei halechem. You just put an oven, you make it. It's not on the mizbeach at all. We're talking about obviously by the shtei halechem. We're talking about you let it grind in a Shabbos, hakodah, and sifting it with the kavasa. What's the contrast? Gabi oimer l'tzira harvesting and v'kodach Shabbos. The Gemara, Ella, no. The Gemara, that's not pshat at all. Ella, I'll tell you what pshat is. Loy, it's supposed to be loy, no. Oimer lahakrava. The oimer is talking about according to Rebbe that you makriv in a Shabbos, not the harvesting. Shtei halechem la'afiyah, the baking it. Uksava Rebbe holds Tanur Mekadosh. When does it become holy? Remember, you had the homachleg before when you put it in the keli. Only when you place it in the oven it becomes holy. And the problem is, here you have no breda. If you're going to bake the Shtei Halechem on Friday, it became holy. There's overlina, and it's possible. You have to wait till Shabbos to be able to bake it on the day. If so, because possible. You're telling me Rebbe holds that's the oven that makes it holy and didn't become holy before. But time we learned, Kivsat said is the sheep of Shavuos, a mekach and salechem are not mekadosh the bread. So it sounds clear for me that it's the sheep. Ella b'shchita yishechti and everything properly. Kate said chocolate shmos everything properly. Kiddush alechem. Then the bread becomes holy. If you did everything loy lishman, like the bread does not become holy. Clearly from here, it's the shchit and the zrika, not the baking in the oven. And then shachtan lishman v'zor dama shaloy lishman. If you shachtan lishman, but you sprinkle the blood, not lishman. Alechem kadosh ve'einu kadosh. Remember, you had before that certain psulim like yaitzi doesn't count, and it's only a certain modicum of kedusha. Divi Rebbe, Rabbi Elazar Shimon says lo olam einu kadosh ad sheyichtel lishman v'yidom lishman. Both of them agree, but if the shchita and the zrika don't do the baking. They're not talking about becoming kodesh. They're talking about kozman. You didn't yet do the shchita. You can take these 2 loaves of bread and take other 2 animals, or other 2 loaves of bread. They're not connected. When do these 2 loaves become connected to these sheep? Only with shechta. Don't do the kedusha. Hadar b'shma.
And the kedusha still happens in the oven.
Yeah, and the tanner is mekadosh it. Therefore, and by oimer we're talking about baking, putting on the mizbeach, and not the harvesting. Let's just go down the page. The following menachos. The following menachos you do kmitza v'sherei l'kohanim, and the balance goes to the kohanim. In fact, all the menachos practically. We know the mincha of a kohen. If a kohen brings his own mincha, the entire thing gets burnt in the mizbeach. But almost all the other menachos, you put a kmitza on the mizbeach, the 3 fingers, and the balance goes to the to the kainim. Minchas asayla mincha flour, machvas the shallow frying pan, machvas deep frying pan, chalus for the kick, and this is called the mincha of the baked oven. There's two kinds. There's chalus and there's king of thin wafers. Minchas Eivigachavim Goyim, Minchas Nashim women, Minchas Aimed, the Minchas of the Aimed, also the Kimitz and the Shirayim, Minchas Chayte, the sinner, which we are going to learn about, and Oil of the Yated, Minchas Kanais and Bayasaita. Rab Shimon also says, Minchas Koyin, Rab Shimon argues, he says, interesting, is one more, the Minchas Chayte Shal Koyin. What happens to a sinner carbon from a Koyin? Also, the entire thing is burden was Bech, but he says in two parts. Nikmetzes, that you do a Kimitza, the Koyin is cut of Latzma, you put the Kimitza on one side, the shirayim kreven lastman, and the balance you put on. You burn the whole thing, but in two separate parts. You do kimitza. I mean, the concept of Shimon, the kimitza is not what enables you to eat the balance. But Raya is still doing kimitza here, even though you don't eat the balance, which the Gemara is going to talk about. And this we had to say. This is the third time. Now we have the saying. There's two Rashi, the old Rashi and the new Rashi, and Ksavya Rashi. I'm not sure exactly. Whenever the Mishnah talks about menachas are 10, either the 10 kinds of menachas, and what you come teach you, Mike Marshall, Lafukin of Shimon. Shimon said, we say there's chalus and a kicker. Minchas maf, a big thing is chalus. If you count, it'll be 10 menachas. But Shimon said you can have either chalus or the kicker, or you can have half and half. So there's 11 actually. The master chalus a kicker, Yavi, Kamashal and delay. We say only 10, or you bring 10 chalus for each one. You can have 5. How do you know that? No, it's according to another version understanding of Papa. When he says 10, doesn't mean 10 menachas. He means 10. If it says chalas, it has to be 10 chalas. The kikin has to be 10 of the kikin, and not like Rav Shimon. You can have 5 chalas and 5 of the kikin. That's what he meant when he said esetanan. Lafukim and Rav Shimon. Two pshatim in the Rishonim. Says the balance goes to the kohenim. Oh, the balance with kohenim. Menolon. How do you know that? How do you know the kohenim get the balance? The ksiva. What do you mean? How you know? It says the ksiva. It says. Even where it's written before it's just written, it says you go to give it to Bnei Aaron. Or the like Ksiva, and even where it's not written before the Ksiva, it says V'zois Teiras HaMincha. It wraps up the whole thing of Mincha. It says this is the laws of Mincha. Hakev Oiseh Bnei Aaron, and you give it to Bnei Aaron. Well, what's your question? You give it to Aaron the Banov. The next passage says Mefedish. So Mor said, if it's a wheat Mincha, I have no question. But that says in Pasuk, a barley carbon, which is basically minchas ha'aymer and the mincha of seita. But about the basar nami, the moment you give kimitza, why do you give kimitza on the mizbech? The balance goes to the kainim. So you're down the kainim. You're right. According to Rabbanan, say that you only do kimitza when the balance goes to the kainim. You're right. Kikaboy, libet of Shimon. He says Shimon says that there's a mincha, the mincha chayte of a koyin that you do kimitza, and the balance also goes in the mizbech, which clearly means that the kimitza does not enable you to eat the balance. You still do kimitza, the koyin is kar la'atzmai, and shirayim kreim la'atzmai. They're separate. Minolos going to him. How do you know the balance goes to the koyin? The other minchas. Amar Chizkiah said, we're talking about the barley one. The Amar Kro, it says in the pasuk, the chol mincha, the lulav hashemen. It says that every mincha, and then it starts spelling out the mincha. Once you say every mincha, you clear every mincha. But the pasuk says, b'lulav hashemen. This is we're going to have in the chitas this week. Every mincha that's b'lulav hashemen, that's stirred with oil, and the chareva that is dry. The chol b'nei Aaron tia. It should go to all b'nei Aaron. What do you have to spell out all the different minachas? If you don't need it for a chitin that's mixed up, because we already know that it goes to Aaron, to Bnei Aaron, it must go to barley, which the pasuk is not talking about. That's how we know that the mincha seita goes to them. And if it doesn't go to the dry one, and the same thing the charava, it doesn't go to the wheat, it goes to the barley. And then tomorrow we'll have this braisa here. We'll use this pasuk for something totally different.